Good evening, everyone. Great to have you here. I'm very excited tonight to have Neve, and she helped me pronounce her name, Neve Mannion, and Nicole. Oh dear, I'm going to let her say her last name. I didn't.
Mikhailuk.
Mikhailuk,
Yes, yes.
just like it's spelled, easy to do. I didn't practice that earlier today. So together they are Nine Thread, and so they do a brand strategy and design studio for startup founders who struggle to communicate their product in a way that lands with the right people. And they help find the story and build the brand around it and strategy and the design. And I'm really happy to have you here because this is a major issue that I find there can be great founders with great startups, but they just don't know how to communicate it. Sometimes I'll work with them in order to help, but these are the real professionals. So I'm going to let you go ahead and take it away.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for that beautiful introduction, Martha. And it's so great to meet you all here. So, as Martha said, I'm Neve. So, I do the brand and content strategy of Nine Thread. So, I'm from Ireland, but I've been living in Barcelona for the last 3.5 years. And I work closely with founders on finding the narratives that they need to be telling and build a brand around that through positioning, messaging, and the world that they want to build.
Yes, and yes, I'm Nicole Mikhailuk. I'm the creative director and also one of the co-founders at Nine Thread. I'm originally from South Africa, but today I'm speaking to you from South Korea. I'm in South Korea at the moment. Um, so I take your core strategy and I translate that into a visual language from your logo to the full visual experience of your brand. Yeah, so my job is to take all those abstract ideas that you have, stitch it together so that your customers, they can't just hear your story, but they can visually see your story. Okay. So today we're going to be covering something called the three W's framework, how it's applied to startups that you know, and we're going to look at a breakdown, a real breakdown of what we've actually gotten wrong in branding so that you don't make the same mistakes. And by the end of this, we hope that you'll be able to self-diagnose which stage you're at and what story you should be telling so that you can move over to the next stage. So we also will be having a Q&A at the end, so please feel free to drop any questions into the chat and then we'll come back to it.
Perfect. Okay, so I want you guys to picture 10 founders in a room. Okay, everyone has a product, they all believe in it, but after 2 years that's passed, only one or two of them have made it to the next stage. So you might be thinking, why? You might think it's because maybe they ran out of runway or that there wasn't a big enough market need or there were too many big competitors. But what we are seeing and believe it is that the story that you're telling isn't matching the stage that you're at. So what's actually happening is a story that essentially got you started as an idea isn't the one that's going to take you and move you to the next stage of growth. So when we sometimes jump too far into the vision or mission, we get people who love what we do, but they actually don't end up buying. Or maybe you think that your product is for everyone, but as we all know, if you try to sell to everyone, you end up speaking to no one. So essentially, we're trying to say your story has an expiry date.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so some, to be honest, some people are trying to like run a marathon, right? But they don't even have the right shoes that fit. And we've all been there. Like everyone has done something like that. Um, and the thing is, like in 2026, anyone can build anything, right? That's where we're at the moment. The barrier to entry is so low at the moment that anyone can vibe code a website in seconds. So the differentiator here in 2026 that we need, it's not about features, it's about your story. Your story is really important. Knowing the right time to tell the right story. So we have the three stages. The why, this is what will win your first customers. The what, that closes the ones that you need right now. And the where, that builds the category that you are actually heading towards.
So we have the why story. Okay, you have the idea, the belief, but do you actually have the story? So the story behind why this product is needed, why now, why are you the right person basically to build it? And the story that lands in this stage is one that's very personal, it's gritty, it's scrappy, it's essentially a journey worth investing in. And that's how, let's say, the founder's story or building in public can actually become a strategy for you. So at the why stage, investors are not necessarily funding the product, they're funding your personal conviction, okay, that the problem is real, that it's urgent, that you're the right person to basically solve it. And that why story is what makes them believe in you before the proof exists. For early customers, let's say you're tapping into recognition, okay? They need to feel that this was built for someone exactly like them, someone who actually understands their problem. So it's not the solution yet, but it's about the problem first, so that they need to be able to see themselves in it first. Let's say you're going for enterprise. It's kind of very similar to the investor. They also need to believe, is this person, do I believe this person enough to take a risk on them without proving something just yet? So across these three, it's not about what you've built, it's about why you had to build it essentially.
hmm and if we look at it from a design perspective, sometimes this is where founders trip up visually. So they think that, okay, from day one, I need to look like a big tech company to be taken seriously. I need to have super polished corporate branding right from the get-go. But at this stage, this is something that could potentially work against you when you're telling this why story. It's important that design at this stage needs to feel human. It needs to feel founder scale. It should feel like there's a person behind the screen, not a huge company, not a boardroom, not AI, right? If it's something that's too slick right from the start, you might lose that personal, gritty trust that you need in the beginning. So it's kind of like showing up to a first date, right? But you're wearing a tuxedo. It doesn't make any sense. It's supposed to be casual. It's supposed to be personal in the beginning. But we do have the next extreme as well. Some founders, what I like to call, does they feel design shamed. So they have this full DIY logo and they vibe coded this website. They've built it themselves. Maybe they're feeling a little bit behind. But that's okay. It's a sign of where you're at the moment, and you should be prioritizing the problem over the polish, especially at this stage. Um, you do want to look visionary, of course, but you also want to show that, look, I'm still working on things. It's about intimacy here at this stage, right? So it's okay to visually say, oh, this is me, this is my mission, and I'm still getting started, I'm still building.
So we're going to move on to use Airbnb as an example. So we all know how they ended up, but we're going to look at how about their story and how they got funded. So it's 2008. Brian and Joe can't pay rent. Okay, I'm sure everyone has been in a position at that time before. It's not the best. Okay, so what they do is they basically blow up a mattress and charge strangers to sleep on it, and that's their idea. There's nothing particularly special about it, except it was a pain point that they felt and knew others had too. They had pitched to many, many investors, got rejections, maxed out credit cards, and after a year, they even still had no growth. But even despite that growth, they did what they could to keep the company alive by designing, producing, and selling cereal boxes during the 2008 recession. And this dedication and grit is basically what got them into Y Combinator, because Paul Graham decides to invest in them, not because he didn't even like the idea, but he could see the passion, the founder fit in it, and knew that there was potential. So this type of why story at this stage, it's personal, it's gritty, it's specific. That's what gets you funded into the next stage.
Yeah, so if we look at their logos from 2007, 2008, it's definitely come a long way, right? So you can see it looks exactly like where they were at, right? At that stage. It matched their energy as well. Two students on a mission. The logos are kind of bubbly, maybe they're a little bit clunky, but the design is telling the same story that the founders were telling at the time. So I mean, imagine if Brian and Joe they walked into their first meetings, but they had the super slick, like corporate logo, right? The investors would kind of say, like, wait, I thought you two were broke and you're sleeping on air mattresses. This doesn't make sense. This is not linking. It's not connecting. So yeah, you can see here. So the design, a little bit scrappy. It's very direct. It's very real. Because that's what the founders were. They were very direct. They were real. And it really does show that visual honesty in their story as well.
Right. So now the what stage. Okay. So you've talked the talk, now you need to walk the walk. So this story is all about credibility, proof, substance, but most importantly, retention. So are people actually coming back or are they disappearing after they've tried it? And the biggest indicator that things are actually working isn't more customers, more clients, more partners, it's better retention. So if your target audience likes it, they're going to play Chinese whispers. Okay, that word of mouth will start to spread. So the story and feelings that you're tapping into essentially across these audiences is for investors, it's confidence. Okay. They need to feel that that risk is being reduced and that it tells investors the story that you told at the why stage, that your first customers understood that it was true enough that they stayed. It's not a bet on a person anymore. Essentially, it's a bet on evidence and the potential for it to grow. So real retention, real results, real outcomes, and what changed for the customer who actually chose you and decided to stay. For customers who the story and feelings you're basically linking into is trust. Okay, they need to feel that other people like them have also tried this and it worked. Obviously, we all know social proof reduces that fear of being the first. You know, they're not the first pioneer, they are joining something that already works. So the story is about the transformation, not the product. For enterprise, if you're going for enterprise, it's all about credibility. Okay, they need to be able to feel safe to be able to recommend it internally. And a named case study always shows that social proof, but focusing on industry specific, is it ROI focus, and what actually changed for the organization as a whole, not just the individual. And the risk of being wrong is manageable because others have already validated the decision. So again, it's not about the product, it is about the outcome.
Hmm. And in terms of design, at this stage, literally you have to shift gears, right? So here, um, at the previous stage, at the Y stage, we talk about having this focus on intimacy, but at this stage, you need to win on clarity, especially when it comes to design. So, design's primary role here would be to reduce friction. If a customer has to work too hard to find the proof of what you do, you've already lost them at this stage. So, from here, you need to move from that kind of scrappy DIY look towards something that says this is reliable, this is something that actually works.
So in the case of Airbnb, okay, in 2009, something actually shifted for them. So it stopped being about the founder and the scrappiness and actually starts being about the proof. So in 2009, they obviously had 10,000 users, 2,500 listings, okay? So that actually showed real people, real stays that led to real proof. The strangers were actually allowing each other to sleep in each other's homes, okay? But how did they get there? So they listed on Craigslist where they knew where the target audience was. Their next blocker was in New York. People weren't converting, so they flew out to their hosts and actually realized the photos were terrible. And they took it upon themselves to buy a camera and upload these professional photos. So the story they were telling at this stage is here's a real home, here's what it looks like, here's a real person that is going to host you. So the proof was the photo. And as we all know, a photo tells 1,000 words, and that is what essentially built that trust. You know, that evidence is still quite small. It still managed to get them $600,000 from Sequoia, hopefully I'm saying that correctly, capital. Okay, so they were not investing in this future vision. Okay, there wasn't that future vision at the moment, but what they were investing was that the early signal was that the why story was, the early story was the why story. Sorry, their early story showed that people were invested in it. Okay, so in 2011, then they went from their tagline being forget hotels, save money, which focused on affordability, to then travel like a human, which emphasized a more authentic kind of human travel experience. So by 2011, they closed $112 million Series B. So that's $600,000 on early users, $112 million on growth. So that story evolved because that proof evolved. And the investors who funded each round were funding the proof that existed at that moment, not the vision of where it was going.
Yeah, and then visually, so you can see already, this is where design grows up, right? So once that those numbers basically took off, at this point, it's design's job to prove, okay, this isn't a fun experiment anymore. This is something reliable. This is actually a reliable service. So this is their 2009 sites. You can already see it's a lot cleaner, it's more organized. The focus here is search, right? The focus here is on search. So you can already tell the design, and it shifted from, hey, look at what we're doing to, hey, look what you can do. Look what you can do now. Yeah, so it moves from this kind of personality-led brand to a product-led brand. Yeah, and at this stage, the best design here is the one that essentially makes the transaction actually feel safe at the end of the day.
And the last stage, we have the where. So by the time you get to the where, you've obviously proven the why, that people actually see an issue. You've shown the what, so you have proof. Now the story stops being about you or your customer and starts being about the world that becomes possible because of what you're building. So this is where category creation essentially happens. So where Airbnb stopped being a cheap hotel alternative and actually became a belonging movement. Now you might want to jump to this where the where story is because you have big dreams or a big mission and you want to change the world. And sometimes if we feel like we talk about the mission, people are going to also be invested in the mission. But I learned this the hard way. That mission only matters once you actually have established yourself in someone's mind and built a relationship with them. Unfortunately, they don't care about the mission until they've actually felt the experience with you. So again, what type of feelings or story are you tapping into? For investors, it's that vision. They need to feel that the market is big enough to be able to justify the valuation and that you're the one to be able to own it. So it's not just about product anymore, it's a category that's being created. A story is about the world that becomes possible and the size of that opportunity. For customers, then it's a sense of belonging. Okay, they need to feel like they're part of something bigger than just a transaction. They're not just buying a product, they're actually joining a movement that shares their value and their belief in a different world. For enterprise, then it's alignment. Again, they need to see that this positions their organization on the right side of the future. If you think Zoom or Slack, they completely changed the future of work. So it's that future story on where the industry is going and why your solution is basically the infrastructure.
Okay. Um, in terms of design, again, so at this stage, it's important that design it stops being a tool and it starts being a world, right? So in order to build this new category, your design essentially needs to look like it belongs in the future that you are describing. So it needs to basically own the room without saying a word, right? This is where, again, we're moving from that scrappy or even functional design into authority. At this stage, it's really important to make sure that when someone sees your brand, they don't just see a company, they don't just see a person, they see a category leader. If your story is, oh, we're changing the world, but your design still looks like a really small local startup, then obviously you're not going to be believable. So at the where stage, design is basically the physical proof that the future that you're promising is already here.
And then with Airbnb, obviously this is their where story. Okay, so they're not talking anything about air mattresses or cheap hotels. Okay, it's no longer about the broke founders or scrappy idea, but it's actually about investors being able to see something much bigger. That it was a marketplace with real momentum, one that was changing how people actually thought about the access to homes and places to stay. So that is a where story. Okay, it's the kind of story you can only tell once you have enough proof, enough customers, and enough retention for that bigger idea to land. A future that basically changes how we work, how we buy, how we live. So ask yourself, what type of version of Airbnb are you currently right now? Are you still the two students with the air mattress trying to sound like belong anywhere? Or are you sitting on mountains of social proof, but still playing it quite small?
Hmm. Um, yeah, so again, this is kind of going back to what I said about design previously. This is where design stops being about the product and it starts being about the symbol. It's becoming a world, right? So again, your brand needs to own the room without saying a word. Um, and this example, this story, this process of Airbnb, it's you can tell at the end it's simple enough for anyone to kind of pour in their own meaning into that symbol. So design specifically here, it's not just a logo, it's essentially an invitation into this global community that they created. So, yeah, design is the evidence of the stage that you are in.
Right. Okay, we're going to look at Stripe. It's B2B, it's technical, so it's not consumer facing. Airbnb is consumer, but Stripe here is technical, but the story still applies. So if you know Stripe, okay, they're two Irishmen, they're developers. Okay, they spent weeks integrating payments into a product, and they themselves felt this frustration. I knew every other developer also felt it too. So they dropped out of college to basically fix this problem that they had lived. They were cycling to the office to save money. So obviously that scrappiness in the early stages that actually can get you quite ahead. So they knew that they felt the frustration themselves, but they obviously had to see whether or not did other people feel this too. So they gave it to their friends, people that they knew, and then a hacker's new news post got them their next 500 customers. So the product actually ended up being way better than everything else because what was on the market was so bad that that word of mouth propelled them further. So being so clear and specific on the problem, maybe it's not as emotional as Airbnb, but it's very, very specific problem and it's clear. That's what kind of got them into the Y Combinator and eventually 2 million seed round with Elon Musk. Okay, so who built PayPal? He was personally had seen this problem better than anyone else, and these two Irish brothers were able to fix it.
And if we look on the right here, um, at their very, very early site, you can see it's really focused on payment processing done right. So, we have those code snippets just right there on the homepage, no flashy imagery, no grand vision statements or anything that we see today. Because again, the design, it's as functional and it's as direct as the story and the stage that they were at the time. So at this stage, design again becomes about credibility. So with them leading with the code on their site, design is essentially saying, hey, like we aren't just talking, here's the evidence that it works. So it's about building trust with the person that's using the tool. And here you can see it. They're basically doing that one line of code at a time.
So then they get to 2011 and they obviously publicly launch. And this is obviously where they shifted from this conviction, this believing of there's an issue to actual proof. So for them, they made a very specific decision about who to target. So it wasn't enterprises or banks, it was actually startups. And they chose them because they had the most urgent version of that problem. They needed payments to work immediately and didn't have time to work out the existing solutions. PayPal just wasn't doing the correct thing for them at the moment. So they knew that if you got into startups that were going to become the biggest companies in the world, then they could essentially grow with them. So that retention, that word of mouth, that community forming around a product that solved a real problem better than anything else. That's what closed then their 18 million Series A in February 2012. But they continued to build a community of developers doing challenges. And again, it's never really about the product. Okay, it's about the outcome, it's what it gives you, that transformation. And essentially that world became that proof that took them to the next stage.
And in terms of design, so this is where Stripe's design became their competitive advantage, right? You can see the massive jump from the previous slide to 2011. Yeah, and by this stage, they weren't just a college project. No, they were kind of becoming the backbone of the internet. So you can see already the design, it shifted to be really incredibly clean, something high performance at the time. And again, you can see that trustworthiness coming through. So at that point, when you're handling millions of dollars for other businesses, your design, it has to look completely bulletproof, right? So they moved away completely from showing code. There's no code, lines of code on their side, and they're showing that outcome. So it's like it's invisible, it's seamless, and it's completely reliable. Yeah, so the design, it's essentially proved the valuation by looking like this global infrastructure that they actually claim to be.
And then move into the where. Okay, anywhere on their website do they talk about developers? It looks nothing like their website previously before. Okay, they're talking about the GDP of the internet. So by this point, Stripe is no longer a payments tool. They've turned into full stacks. They're doing checkout, billing, subscriptions, corporate cards. Their target audience now has expanded completely broad. So startups, marketplaces, governments. So obviously their strategy from the very beginning was to get into startups that were going to become the biggest companies on the internet, hopefully, and grow with them. So by the time these companies were unicorns, Stripe was already their infrastructure. So their story obviously had to grow to match what they actually had become. If they used the story previously before of developers and cycling to save money, then it just wouldn't work. Okay, so this is when the increase the GDP of the internet started to land. Okay, it's not as a tagline, but it's the truth of what Stripe basically had built. So, as I said, you can't say that in 2010, when you were two brothers cycling to the office, you earned that story by first proving that there is a developer frustration, that it was real. And then you prove developers choose you instead. And then you prove that the world runs on it, what you built. So I want you to think, are you walking into rooms with last stage's story?
So, as you can see, Neve and I, back and forth, back and forth. This is what the process should be like as well. Strategy is the map, but design is the territory. So if they aren't built together, yeah, your customer will get lost in the gap. Okay, so this is a different one because this is our work, and we're going to be completely honest about what we got right and what we got wrong because we do want to make sure that you don't fall into the same trap. Okay, so this is Eva Natura. It's a biotech startup that they have an additive that breaks down compostable plastic safely without using industrial composting. And they wanted us to help them become bolder in their visual identity, but also help them build a brand as they prepared to go bigger. So if you are a tech startup, you probably found yourself falling into this technical process or in the features around the product. And while this is great for a specific audience who work in the industry, it differs on like who you want to buy it. So that's where we were there, right, to understand the science and kind of change it into language that the right people would actually understand at the end of the day.
So we ran through our collaborative double dip workshop. So it's very much back and forth with each other. And we helped them reveal the narrative essentially that they were hiding at the time. They were using a lot of technical jargon. We ended up pulling out that story. So it's a mother and daughter co-founders who believe that our legacy is not our stories, it believes our legacy should be the stories that we leave behind, not the materials. Okay, so they had created their own home lab. They'd been testing for years. Their grandfather was involved in leading a plastic ban. So it was real, it's personal, and it shows that conviction. So we want to essentially blend the mission into the copy while also still being clear about who's it for. Originally, we had started with very niche copy on manufacturing, but at the time, for them, it just didn't feel right. So we expanded it to be a bit more broad, focusing a bit more on the emotional aspect. So plastic engineered to expire, end of waste built in. That's what we moved from built-in biodegradation to plastic engineered to expire. So we basically built out their full rebrand from their positioning to their messaging to the visual identity, website, and logo. And we basically created the Eva Natura world. So once they launched, they got really great feedback. Okay, people felt the website was super clear, and they even signed their first pilot after a year of conversations. So they had said their tagline was landing with the right people. And as you can imagine, we were very, very excited. But we confuse the why and where story. Okay, their powerful narrative about being a mother and daughter co-founder and their mission is for when they were changing, completely changing how the market responds to plastic materials. So 2 months go by, and after having our 60-day check-in with them, they'd figured out by speaking with more of their target audience, they realized it wasn't speaking the language of who it matters to most. So manufacturers with a real problem weren't seeing themselves in it. So they thought it looked great, but it still wasn't clear what their unique selling point was or who it actually helped. So what we needed to do was to move from the why story to the what stage, but instead we handed them very much a where story. So essentially what we kind of learned was warm feedback feels like validation, but it isn't the same as clarity. Okay, people can tell you that something is beautiful and still walk away unsure what it actually is or who it's even for. The other trap is assuming, again, as I mentioned, people don't always care about your mission as much as you do. Okay, that's something that you essentially need to earn. So with Even Natura, what it taught us is that being specific is not a limitation. Okay, it is the thing that actually gets you in the room. When you try to speak to everyone at the same time, you end up resonating with no one. Okay, so look at owning one person, one customer, one conversation. And once you prove that, then you can expand from there once you prove it works. Mission does matter. I don't want to say that mission does not matter. I'm a very big believer in that, but it cannot be the first thing you lead with if nobody knows you yet. So again, the story has to earn the right to be able to go that big. And last, brand is not a fixed thing. It's not a sign it over and it's done completely. Okay. The best thing you can do is stay close enough to your audience to know when something isn't landing. So essentially you can move quickly when it isn't.
Hmm. So
Mhm.
again, yeah, what we learned is that you can have aware vision, but maybe at the time you need a what handshake. So the design has to meet the customer where they are today and not where you want them to be in 10 years, right? So again, with Even Natura, we had to move them from kind of dreamy to directional to make that very first pilot for them actually happen.
So before we wrap up, we just want to give you something that you can think about, or maybe we can discuss afterwards. Okay. So who specifically right now has the most urgent reason to say yes to what you're building? Okay. So maybe it might be tempting to say age range or their job, founders, or enterprise businesses, but that's not really a person, that's more of a category. So sometimes we have a feeling, oh, if we niche down too much, it's going to cut us off. We're going to lose so much potential customers. But what it actually does is give you even more clarity on the story that you need to tell. So I want you to think of the actual person that you are selling to sitting across from you right now that has the problem that your product solves. And not that it just annoys them or yeah, it has to be something that actually takes up their mind space. It interrupts their day to day. So if you're still describing a very broad group of people who might eventually care, you're probably telling a where story before you've earned it. So go back to who is that one person that you can speak to.
And for our second question, so is the story that you are telling right for the stage that you are actually at? Or are you telling the story you wish you were at? So there are two ways that this can go wrong, strategically and visually. At first, you are trying to get your first customers, but you're already talking about the vision and the movement. It does feel inspiring, but maybe the right person cannot actually see themselves in it. So you haven't given them a specific enough reason to say yes today. So your design maybe looks like, again, a corporation when at that stage it needs to look like a person. And secondly, maybe you have proof. You have proof, you have customers, you have retention, but maybe you're still telling that founding story. Maybe you're still leading with why you built it instead of what it does for the people who are currently using it. And the proof is sitting right there, and the story, it's not using it, right? So maybe also you're still using that DIY logo from 3 years ago, but your design is still screaming like experimental project, not real and reliable. Um, Both of these can cost you. One of these, one basically will lose the room because it feels too big and it feels detached. And the other will lose the room because it's too small. Maybe it feels too risky as well. So the question is not just are you jumping ahead, it's are you telling the truth about where you're actually at right now? And does the look of your brand actually match the truth of where you're at?
The last question we want you to think of, if someone has never heard of you and finds your website or hears your pitch, will they actually understand what you do, who is it for, and why it matters? So not your mother that you've explained it to 47 times, or not your co-founder who's in it with you, they're too close, a stranger, okay? Someone who has no context, no patience, and probably about 8 seconds until they decide whether to keep reading. 8 seconds is giving a lot of time, 3 seconds, I'll say. So if you don't have the answer to this, your homework, our only homework is to go speak to someone who has no context about what you're building and test it. So what does your story say to that person right now? So if you're the lucky one, if all three of those questions felt comfortable, then you're in the right room. But if there's one of those questions where you're thinking to yourself, I'm not 100% sure, then that's where you need basically to direct your focus and find that answer.
Yes. So, essentially, you are already doing something that more than 90% of people would never do, right? You're building something from scratch. You're backing it with so much belief, that hopefully you're not going to stop. So we do want you to succeed as much as you do, right?
So every founder that we've worked with or case study that we've shown or honest mistakes that we've made, it always comes down to that one thing. Okay, what story are you telling? And is it matching your reality? Because when we tell the wrong story, whether it's to investors or to customers or to people on the internet, it does cost you that chance to grow. So again, our only homework is you answer those questions hopefully, truthfully, not where you'd like to be, but where you want to go, because that is essentially what will move you forward. So enough from us. Go find the right story for the right room. So good. Any questions?
This might be a silly question.
Never a silly question.
I know, that's what I say too. Can you please go back to
Yeah,
the
of course.
beginning? Oh,
Of
I'm
course.
sorry.
No, no.
And let me so the why and the
Here,
okay,
the
the
why,
why, yeah, so the why story, the what story, and the where story.
the three
Okay,
W's.
yes. Okay. I don't quite have them in my head, but let's let Louise ask her question. Let's see if I can figure it out well.
Hi there, thanks guys. Really, yeah, really enjoyed that. Very clear. I guess a lot of it did resonate with what I've experienced and what I've heard from others. The bit that was a little bit counterintuitive was telling the problems of telling the where story too early.
Mhm.
So I'll tell you what specific time that's counterintuitive, which is that we're often pitching to impact investors and people who are, want to buy that big mission, change the world kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
if there's something that we're kind of guilty of, it's going early for that.
Mhm.
But it's for a reason because it seems that people want to know even at early stages. So I'd just be interested if you've got thoughts. Is it like you should never go early, or are there some circumstances where it does make a bit more sense?
For sure. I definitely do think with the Where story, it's not saying that you can never talk about the Where story or the vision or the impact. There is that always going to underpin your story, but in terms of leading with it, maybe not necessarily, because it's still obviously they want to be able to see the mission, the movement, but what is underneath it? Okay, what are you actually going to do? What's the outcome? What is the benefit that they're going? So I think the bigger picture, 100%, it definitely needs to be involved in each stage. But when you lead with that story, that's what we mean in terms of maybe the why, the what, the where. That's what you're leading with.
Yeah, cool. Sense. If you have any feedback on, you can see we go for branding. So if you have any feedback, happy to take it.
Nicole, you're the design expert out of us.
It is tricky to say based on just looking. It's kind of small. I don't know maybe if it's just me. Can you maybe, it would be great if you could just talk a little bit about kind of, how it came to be, the logo, the colors.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I think when we started we had the sort of different size dots thing, but just in blue or shades of blue.
Hmm.
And I mean the idea really is just like an extraction of showing air pollution in a sort of, design way. I think it was actually when we brought in our first marketing person that we brought in the orange bits and the idea there, I think, was actually to try and make things look a bit more fun and a bit less science, which we get quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be too science, basically. And so I think at that point we brought in the orange. Yeah, so that's kind of, yeah, broadly where we came from. We did look at a few others that were more sort of swirls of air and that kind of thing before we went for this one, but we realized other people had used them. So, so
Mm-hmm.
we reversed those ideas.
Can,
Sorry,
I
in the background, so I do apologize.
Okay.
no
can I
worries.
ask, Louise, what stage do you think you are? 1, 2, or 3?
Yeah, it's a good one, Martha. I mean, I think we should be at stage 2. So we product that works, that, reliable, yeah, all of that stuff that you were saying for stage 2, I think we should be. But I'm sure we're guilty of just jumping from one, back and forth between them, probably.
Is there any challenges that you currently have, or so far it's going good?
I think the biggest one is like, well, the sort of hair on fire problem for air pollution, because it does affect everybody.
Yeah.
And we do try to focus in on those for whom it has the biggest impact, like you're saying, the ones, who are properly affected in the now. But then like something happens that kind of takes us back out to, like, so we did stuff for the London Marathon. And well, we might have wanted to make that about kind of the performance end, so that it's like clear that, air pollution exposure affects your performance, and going for that kind of
Nice.
London Marathon, like their whole approach is it's a mass participation event. We're not talking about performance. That's not what so we kind of got pulled into the like, there's 59,000 people running and they're all breathing some level of polluted air. We kind of got drawn back into that. So I think we just have to constantly try and make sure we're going, doing the proper niche targeting stuff.
Mhm. It's hard because you can see the opportunity with a lot of other different target audiences of how it does affect everyone, but it is true once you can target one specific kind of audience, because in terms of your like your messaging, your positioning, it needs to make sense to them to then own that niche, and then you can start to get broader and broader. There is something for everyone for being here, is that afterwards we'll do a brand story audit, so you can book a one-to-one. It's completely free, just to say thank you for being here. So if there is something you wanted to go more in depth, Louise, then we can 100% do that also as well. Good, perfect. It's okay.
Can I ask a question?
Of
So,
course.
yeah, so basically, sometimes in the life cycle stage of the product, you're going through, different stages of how your
Mhm.
product develops. And
Yeah.
you start with, like, let's say innovators, people who are just excited about the technology. And then you move
Mhm.
into, someone who's kind of visionaries, etc.
Mhm.
And so those could be completely different user groups. And so, for
Mhm.
instance, we're working with, we're trying to solve communication problem where like you have fragmented communication pretty much everywhere in chats and emails. And
Mhm.
sometimes you lose a thread of what you're talking about. And you could look for topic being in one place and then another place, and we try to kind of bring it together. So I
Mhm.
think we are kind of transitioning between 1 and 2 stage because we have some early
Mhm.
customers,
Yeah.
but we're trying to kind of, improve our product.
Mhm.
So what I notice is that we have a lot of customers who would be genuinely, I think, excited about the technology, and they pretty
Mhm.
much don't care about the design. So
Mhm.
if you look at, ChatGPT logo, it's pretty kind of black and white. And at the same time,
Mhm.
like one of the kind of target groups that we identified is kind of project managers, let's put it this way. And the majority of people who are work as project managers are women. And so the people that I
Mhm.
interview, they're actually in favor of having kind of bright design on, on their website, on their dashboards, stuff like that. So I wonder like whether you can actually kind of switch from one pattern to another, like being kind of simplistic and then evolve? Because all logos evolve. Like if you yourself kind
Mhm.
of, shown
Yeah.
Airbnb being something very simple, and then it kind of became something else, which is absolutely makes sense.
Yeah.
But for technical users, it's something that witnesses they want to have something like really kind of technical and something that appeals to them. At the same time,
Mhm.
it not necessarily appeals to women. So it's kind of an interesting thing that we're, witnessing. So how do you approach that problem?
Right, that's
Um,
I'm sorry if I maybe I should I maybe I probably should I repeat myself? Because the idea is like there are very technical users who want everything simple,
yeah.
and there are like different set of segments of users who want to be want to have a kind of fancy design. So how do you do that?
I think you need to have a balance. You do need
Mhm.
to have a balance. You need
Mhm.
to find kind of this middle ground of, being simple, having that more technical feel, but at the same time, if you do have that, maybe you might get lost in kind of this, sea of blue and white technical.
Mhm.
Um, so if you kind of balance it a little bit more with that boldness, maybe I don't want to say quirkiness, but it kind of makes you a little bit more memorable. So there is a line. You don't have to go completely, eggs and cows.
Mhm.
But you can add in what I want to say, like a little bit of flavor without making it too technical. It's balanced. I think that would be the key word here. You need to have a balance between the two. Yeah.
The way we kind of approach it is to have like overall muted design, kind of
Hmm.
neutral, with some elements that would stand out. So on the one
Yeah.
hand, it doesn't like scream, to our early users, like innovators. At the same time, it's still appealing to the early users that we think would be interested in this. But I would
Mhm.
definitely use the opportunity to show it to you, like you said, 1 hour session or something, if that's okay.
Perfect. I'm
Yeah.
going to share the link
Yeah, because
here.
we're still in transition, like changing the design a little bit, and yeah, I would definitely
Hmm.
use that opportunity. Thanks.
No
Yeah, yeah,
worries.
yeah. There are different ways that you can add kind of boldness
Mm.
into design. It doesn't
Hmm.
have to be bright neon every time.
Hmm.
Like you said, you're adding in elements. There are subtle ways. As you can see with us, we have gone all out with the color, with the imagery. So yeah, there are different ways to kind of balance it out.
Mhm.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. All right.
Louise? Okay.
Go ahead, Louise.
Sorry,
That's
sorry.
okay.
The size of the window just to look at your Calendly thing, and then I lost all the control. No, it's just a very particular one. So if others have got more general comments, yeah, I'm happy to wait. Shall I come in? Um, so yeah, I mean yeah, this is very particular, but just seeing your thing about what's the problem that you've got at the moment. I mean, one thing that we come back to a lot, and it's not exactly a problem. We've kind of got we know what we're doing with it, but it's kind of comes and bites us sometimes, is the difference between the like company branding and presence and everything and the product.
Mhm.
I don't know whether there's anything from, I mean, I love the Stripe and Airbnb stories are brilliant, or anything else, So we try and do sort of company branding is what we want to present to investors. We're sort of quite scientific, quite yeah, kind of clean and all the rest of it. And then the logo we've got for our product, which is called AirTrack, and the whole branding is it's meant to be a lot more kind of consumery, fun, brighter colors. There are some similarities in some of the colors, but it's quite a different brand. So just wondered if, like, at the stage we're at, is this just too much pain to put ourselves through, trying to keep two kind of branding books and logos and everything all, and make sure we know the right time to be using each one? Is it too much pain, or is it a sensible thing to be doing?
Okay, so you have the labs, the Airway Labs, and then you also have AirTrack. So two different audiences that you're going for. Okay, in terms of what stage are you at with both?
So the product is in the market, users around the world, etc. And in terms of the company, I mean, we're kind of pre-seed round stage.
Yeah. So is the product the same for both?
I mean, we would
Is it-
talk
Yes.
about it as like our first product, you know,
Okay.
just our first outing in the world is definitely not our last. Yeah.
Okay, so the company and then also the consumer, it's the same product, but for two different audiences. Sorry,
Well,
maybe I'm not.
yeah, so I'd say like our company logo and stuff, it's not a product thing. It's not
Okay.
the audience that it's for is more for like long-term partners, investors, etc.
Okay, so the company one is like your parent company, and this product is a branch of that
Yeah,
also.
yeah.
Okay. And for the company, then why do we have consumer and then also company? What are we selling the company part? Is it still the product?
Um, this is probably something to go into in depth, isn't it? So I mean, I think it's just like we came up with the company name because
Yeah.
you know we wanted sort of elements of scientific and all of it, like I've said.
Mhm.
But we realized you can't sell an app that's called Airware Labs. It just doesn't work. So we came up with AirTrack and we're kind of, you know, running with that. Um,
Mhm.
but it does mean we sort of have to have this like dual brain, you know, which one are we using today kind of thing.
Well, I suppose I guess it's using it as I said, like the parent that you're working from, and this is a product that you're selling from it. Because as you said, obviously not to go too much into the future, but as you said, you probably be branching into different products as well, I presume. So I don't think there's an issue having kind of this here. I guess in terms of the product, you say it's going to consumer, so it's not going to B2B or
Uh,
enterprises.
I mean, to some extent it is through like
Okay.
employee being, but it's primarily focused on direct to consumer. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I think we're going to use the audit to go a little bit deeper into that
Hmm.
for sure. Okay, perfect. I'm going to write those down. Anyway, thank you for the question. And Jeff, am I saying that correctly? Jeff?
Left me on mute. Jeff, but Jeff
Jeff.
is also fine because I know
Jeff.
in English you probably use it as J instead of yeah. Well, so
So
yeah,
yeah, Jeff.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, Jeff. Okay, perfect. Amazing. Any other questions or anything you thought was interesting throughout the workshop, workshop webinar? I'm good.
Well, we are just about at time.
Mhm.
Very interesting. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation. Thank you for participation and everyone who came. And that's
Thank you for having us.
I love that I get to learn all of these things. I think it's fantastic. I'm
Yeah.
going to go ahead and stop recording.